Welcome into the Recipe Podcast, Celebrity Secrets to a Successful Life. I'm your host, Chef Charles Carroll. What a great day, what a great show we have for you today. Christian, how was that intro? It was
better? A good one. It was
better than
exciting.
Yeah. So before we get started, I just want to go around the table and welcome everybody in. We got the Bobbit. Say hey, Bobbit.
Hey, what's up?
Venus, you doing okay?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, and you got to run right out of here, I understand, right? You can't stay for the whole show?
I have I can leave in 15 minutes.
15 minutes. According to that watch or the real watch, the real time?
Because this is 5 minutes fast, then I could leave in 18 minutes.
So you're doing that math in your head?
I just did that math. I just did that math live. That's
no
the
shit.
Yeah, that's the difference between my generation.
All
and
right,
the one
good
that's
for
out
you. and then we got Monica over there. Monica pushing all the buttons. You doing all right?
Yeah.
And then we got Jay, the Dr. Jay over there, making the cameras and everything happen. You doing all right, Jay?
Yes.
Erica's helping too. Thank God Erica's here to keep an eye on you. And then we also have Bart Womack in house. So welcome to the show, Bart.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to get into everything that you have going on because it's a pretty crazy world and what you're doing right now. So we're going to get into that real quick. But first, I wanted to give a quick shout out to a friend of ours who is the Chef's Garden in Ohio. Real dear friends of ours. They recognize and embrace traditional farming philosophies and techniques that have sustained our farmers for generations. It's kind of unique that we have him on. That I'm talking about this today because Bart's going to talk a lot about cool stuff like this. But this is an amazing company, and if you're buying produce or don't know these guys, you must be living on a rock because I would, without a doubt, Christian, you know this company, right? Chef's Garden.
I live for them.
Their product is amazing. I mean, it's off the charts, and we get truckloads of food all the time. But to think that you're cutting fresh vegetables and organics and stuff and sending them overnight to us, and they're amazing. So we love them. If you're not familiar with them, go to Chef's Garden. Actually, it's chefs-garden.com, and you'll see all their amazing things that they have. That's what's hot right now. Also note that they have an incredible event coming up September 11th with Chef Thomas Keller and Daniel Boulud. Chef's Garden is an amazing supporter of chefs, including the Bocuse d'Or and Team USA. I was a competitor with the American Culinary Olympic team for many, many years. And some of the hot items they got going on right now is petite carrots in the micro salad sensation, which we get in the pepper box. So that's all super cool. So go to Chef's Garden. That's chefs-garden.com and check out all their stuff. And actually, we did a podcast, Bobbit, with them. We did a podcast with them. It was number 150 at the ACF convention, right? Pretty cool guy, right?
Yeah, he was super nice.
Yeah, and they're doing some amazing things with the soil and how they're actually harvesting. So they're committing to growing vegetables slowly and gently. So there you have it. I just wanted to give a shout out to those guys because they're good to us and they're good people. Also, the rest of our sponsors that we have, Dunkin' Coffee, Mills Dunkin', will grind and toast your blend of coffee that you like any way you like it. Also have amazing tea and some of the best tea in the world. They have their Aceway Incorporated owner, Ricardo, is an amazing guy. Attention to detail, whether it's an office building or your kitchens. He will clean them with amazing customer service. Texas Beef Council, we love them because they love chefs. And if you don't like beef, there's something wrong with you. Escoffier School of Culinary Arts online programs that they have there are second to none. So if you're working and you're trying to get an education, that's the way to go. The Escoffier School of Culinary Arts, American Culinary Federation, which Bobbit and I were just there doing our on-location podcast in Orlando. Check out how many shows we have, Bobbit, from that.
Maybe like 10.
10 shows, 10. Yeah, we did.
It was a lot.
Yeah, really cool guests, including Farmer Lee Jones, and go check those out. So this is the Recipe Gourmet Club Live. But also go to our other show. If you're not familiar with it, go to our other show, which is the Recipe Unplugged. You have to subscribe to that separately. Make sure you do that and listen to our in-house comedian, Eric Knowles, and listen to all those shows. So there's 2 different shows we want you to follow there, okay? So the Gourmet Club Live you're listening to now, Recipe Celebrity Secrets, and then the Recipe Unplugged. So I know that's a mouthful. It's a lot to talk about, but there we have it. So I'm going to sit this down here. Also, before we get started, I wanted to give a shout out to my buddy Jason Soul, who's a listener. You got that, Jay? Can you show our so if you're a fan of the show, you know what that means. That's what do they call those bikes? Recumbent bikes. Jay's got one of those, right, Jay?
4 of them.
Yeah, you got 4. So that's our first gift. Actually, it's not our first gift. We have a couple other gifts here from fans of the show. So thank you, Jay, for a shout out to you, man. I love you, and thanks for bringing that by the booth the other day. So all that housekeeping out of the way, Bart, how you doing, bro?
Oh, very good, brother. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, man. I want to get right into everything that you're doing, because you're doing some state of the art, amazing stuff, and cutting edge technology that is off the hook, and the world needs to know about it, and it's futuristic stuff. So tell everybody, our listeners, we got some really cool listeners all around the world, but tell them just kind of a synopsis of what it is you're doing.
Sure. Well, I am the founder and CEO of Eden Grow Systems, and also the inventor of its first product, the Life Pod. Essentially, we design next-generation farming systems that are designed to have the greatest economy of scale, in that they use the least amount of energy. They actually produce more energy than they use. They produce their own water. They can operate for the longest amount of time without resupply or connected to any kind of grid. It's what we call farming 2.0. Essentially, for the last 11,000 years, farming has maintained pretty much the same profile that it always has. You had to have good land, you had to have good weather, and you had to have good luck. And then you had to be willing to work really hard. Mm-hmm. And if you put all those things together and you had a little bit of knowledge, then chances are you would be successful at growing crops. We wanted to create a system that wouldn't require any of those things. Mm. So our system doesn't require good land. It doesn't require good weather. It doesn't require you to have a background with a lot of knowledge in farming. And it can, like I said, operate the longest amount of time without resupply. So that's what we call farming 2.0, is that we made a system that could totally operate with a lot less input into the system than traditional farming.
What do you think about all that, Christian?
Sounds from the future.
Well, we're trying.
Well, I mean, in fact, you've had some communication with NASA, and some of the original, some of the conversation is being able to be self-sustaining, maybe not on this planet. Is that correct?
No, it's exactly true. So our CTO, Jeff Raymond, he has a YouTube channel called The Real Martian. I'd invite everybody to go and check that out. He's been doing it for years.
The Real Martian.
The Real Martian. So let me give a little bit of background how he and I met. I was developing, for our purposes, the ultimate on-world system. I wanted to create a system that you could go off-grid and function as long as possible without resupply.
Jay.
He wanted
that
to...
sounds good, man.
Right
off-grid, yeah. Off-grid, underground, yeah.
Right. He was designing a system for off-world. He wanted to create a system for, Martian colonies. That's why, ergo, the Real Martian. Or, any off-world situation. And he and I were on a panel in LA for New Space, SpaceX. And it was for farmers in space. And we were both presenting at the same time on this panel, and we realized very quickly that we were approaching the problem from the exact same standpoint. That even though I was building one for Earth and he was building one for Mars, the same fundamental questions were the same. How can you operate the longest amount of time without resupply? If you're totally cut off, how can you take care of yourself for the longest amount of time? And how do you make it as easy as possible for the user so that they're not having to learn all the things that we had to learn? Because one of the things that Jeff and I realized getting into this, especially when you're doing aquaponics and aquaponic systems and you're designing them, you have to understand HVAC, you have to understand plumbing, you have to understand electricity. That's just the physical aspects of the system. After that, you have to understand botany, aquaculture, how all of these things come together. So there's a very small percentage of the population that are enthusiasts about this, that really get into it and spend the time to learn all of those different things. But these systems have so much potential to offer mankind in general. What I saw is like, this is the barrier. How do you get the barrier down to where the learning curve is not stopping people from being able to operate these systems efficiently? Because there's plenty of aquaponics companies that will sell you a kit, and that you can buy a book, but still it comes down to months and months of learning curve, and if you make one mistake, you can screw the whole system up. So even though it's very efficient, it requires this knowledge that if you don't have, you can end up screwing the whole system up. And so that was one of the fundamentals of what we were going for. Not just to create the most efficient system, but how do you take the learning out of it so that the end user can operate it as easily as possible.
So what are we talking about here? Like what's in this system that you produce?
It's an aquaponics system, and Jeff is the true genius behind it. He really took all of everything that we were doing and he was doing, and we combined it together into what's called the Genesis system, patent pending. The Genesis system is a system that uses solar power, wind power, dehumidifiers, biodigesters, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and robotics in an aquaponics system to manage the system so efficiently that it's doing what I said it was doing. It's producing more energy than it's utilizing. It's all of its own water. It's producing methane that can be used for fuel, either to power it or things outside of the system. And it's doing all of these in a way that doesn't require the user to have all the knowledge. And also greatly reduces the amount of human labor. So to give an example, you can take 30 of our units, put them on 1 acre of land, and on that 1 acre of land, depending on what crops you're growing, you can grow, well, in any formulation, many magnitudes more than what could be grown on that land. But you could put it on desert land anywhere, and within a few weeks, it's producing more electricity than it's using. It's producing its own water. It's producing the methane for fuel, and it can all be operated by a single human. So one human being can essentially operate an entire plantation's worth of farming without any prior experience.
So what does this pod look like?
It's hexagonal in shape. They're designed so that they.
Bart,
can,
is there a? It's not a website, but is there YouTube video? Is there something we can pull up while you're talking?
We have our website. It's EdenGrowSystems.com. But the only thing that's up there right now is the prototype versions that we built, so it doesn't accurately reflect. Now, we will be launching in the next couple of weeks our product catalog, and on the Real Martians YouTube channel, we'll be showcasing as the production model that we're building right now is being built. It'll be completed in November. Jeff's just now getting ready to break ground in the next couple of weeks. So that's Jeff right there. That's a great quote by him talking about the system will replicate exactly what people need on Mars, Raymond said. So while Musk is working on getting us there, we're working on staying alive once we get there. And that was the whole point. It's like, yeah, of course, we can go to space and we can eat food out of packets from here to eternity, but it's about quality of life. Do we actually want to go places and live the same quality of life that we have here?
Have you contacted Elon Musk or tried to contact him at all?
So, Musk is pretty smart, and he's seen the future, and his brother went and founded a company that's trying to build the same systems, but to give us a little bit of credit, I think we're a little bit ahead of everyone, because while so many people have rushed into the vertical farming space, they haven't asked from our industry analysis, they haven't asked a lot of the questions that you really needed to ask, which really came down to HVAC and energy, electrical energy and human energy for maintaining the system. So there's a lot of confusion in the industry right now, it seems, in how the best way to apply these technologies. So, right now the only commercially viable system that's really being worked out is these large systems like Costco and Walmart are going to start building at their point of sale, where they're going to have giant, leafy green lettuce. So far, the industry's figured out how to grow lettuce and make a profit out of it. And with the lettuce, it really is true that the larger you get and the closer you get to the distribution point, the more affordable it becomes. But I would still say they're missing some fundamental aspects of the problem, which comes back to energy and HVAC. And that's what's interesting about our systems as well, is, when we got into this, we weren't worried about making a commercially viable system. Our system's purpose was, how do you get out in the middle of nowhere at the end of the supply chain and live? How do you live? But what's fascinating is because we were approaching it from that, and because we were asking so many questions about how do you make it so energy neutral and energy positive, water neutral, water positive, those questions led us to creating a better economical model. So now we actually have made a system that can compete in the economic scale with everything else, because we approached it from that standpoint.
So this picture that we're looking up on here now, that's the prototype, is that right?
No, that's one of the systems that we had worked on. If you scroll down, if you scroll down in that's the schematic of the prototype, and then if you scroll down a little bit more, that actually shows some of what we've grown.
So those are like almost like shipping containers.
Yeah, that's where we started. Okay, so
Kind of like what we saw.
In Orlando.
Yeah.
I,
But
sent,
we-
I sent him those pictures.
But we have moved away from shipping containers because the reality is even though shipping containers are very affordable, very cheap to get, the materials that they're made out of and the problems that they cause with HVAC and energy consumption is what really, in our opinion, makes them untenable. So there's a lot of shipping containers that have come out. There's a few companies, but the reality is because they didn't ask the question of how the HVAC and the energy. Most of the people that buy a lot of the companies are going out of business, and a lot of people that buy these things end up going out of business because those companies, they made good growing systems, but then they passed those energy costs on to their consumers.
Sure.
And so the shipping container really, and especially all the ones that are in the market right now, they can only function in a very narrow band of climate conditions, and they have to be operated by the people that buy them to actually make them profitable. And that's their failing so far inside that we've seen.
So how does it create its own energy? Is it for sun panels?
It's a combination of solar power, wind power, and a biodigester. So the biodigester recoups all of the organic waste, turns that into methane, and then the methane can either be used for fuel outside of the system or a generator that's inside the system.
Get that, Christian?
I mean, what are you selling?
We sell systems.
Okay, but I'm saying once you have the system, what can it yield?
Well, that's something else that we're excited about. Ours are the only systems that can do root crops. We can do corn. We can do hemp. We have the most variety of crops that can be grown out of our system. Everybody else rushed into leafy greens, herbs, and strawberries because those were the things that were the easiest to make money at. But again, because we were trying to design a survival system, our system can actually grow almost anything.
And have you guys tested the nutritional value of what it's produced?
Well, so far not in our system. Like the one that's being built right now, it'll be tested. But traditionally, aquaponics, aeroponics do supply a high nutrient value of what's grown out of the systems.
So there's a prototype. So that was one of your first prototypes, but there's a new prototype that's octagon in shape. Is that right?
Yeah. I'd get in real trouble calling it a prototype. Jeff will flail me.
All right. So this is what
It's called a production model because the prototypes, we've answered the questions. You know, Jeff's had his built for 5 years. We've had ours built for 2.5 years now. And that was what we were doing, is we were figuring out what worked and what didn't work. Now what we're building is a production candidate because it's designed for mass production.
Who funds all this?
And we were self-funded. We raised all the money between ourselves, friends and family. At this point, we've probably raised about $600,000 to build both the prototypes, and now we're building the production candidate with that money. Jeff actually left his job at In Situ, which is a subsidiary of Boeing, where he'd been an engineer for 10 years building drones for the military. And he took a big leap and left his work there so that he could focus 100% of his time on this project.
Now this first system is going to be available. I mean, it's going to be completed somewhere around November.
It'll be completed in November, and all of the growth in it will be fully grown by the end of December.
So is there any thought to, because this is all plant-based, so if this was a Mars thing, what about protein?
Well, it does produce fish as well that you can eat. The real expansion.
How's that?
That's awesome.
Well, aquaponics. That's what aquaponics is. So you feed the fish, and then the fish emulsion that goes into the water is actually what feeds the plants.
Okay.
So in later iterations, there will be a multitude of pods, and one of the later ones will actually be the rabbit pod. And there'll be rabbits that'll be grown as well. And rabbits are the most efficient red meat that you can produce solely feeding them produce. So what our plan is to actually grow duckweed. Duckweed will then be used to feed the fish and the rabbits, and then their waste will go back into the system and feed the plants. So the ultimate goal is to create a system where you have
Full circle.
Yeah, exactly. Where we're duplicating what's happening in nature. You know, nature, and this is what I always say: is nature's shown us what we need to know, and nature is a perfect system, and it's a perfectly closed system. It doesn't require anything when it's being left alone. It can be optimized, and that's what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to duplicate what's in nature and optimize it for the best economy of scale.
So the best case scenario, because this is pretty futuristic, it's pretty out there. What's the best case scenario in the next 3 to 5 years of the system? Who, like, if you could paint that perfect picture, who will own these things?
Everyone in America. You want the best case scenario? My dream is that we would have a system because they don't have to come inside of the format that we're doing. We could put them in garages, we could put them in attics, we can put them in barns. You know, my goal is complete food independence for the people of the world, in this country and every other country. You know, this is where I get into my philosophy. The reality is the biggest question of our time is, will technology be used to control people, or will it be used to set people free? There is no more wiggle room that we've had this dance throughout history. It really is, technology now can either be used to make people completely independent or completely tracked and controlled. So we have these awesome corporations like Amazon and everything else that have been designed to give us everything we want, but also have complete control over every aspect of what we want. I think that that's not the future. I think the future is our ability to produce everything ourselves. And when you give people the ability to produce everything themselves, now you're really setting them free. And where does that begin? It begins with clean water, clean energy, clean food. So, you know, what I see is over the last 20 years, you've watched the prepper market explode. You've watched people wanting to homestead and go off-grid explode. You turn on CNN or Fox News, and what is it in the commercials? It's gold, it's silver, it's emergency food. And it's because we've watched, you know, these events like Katrina, Rita, Puerto Rico, Harvey, what's happening in the Bahamas right now. And people are beginning to see that even though we have all these capabilities, that when the system goes down, they're caught out. They're in a dangerous situation, you know. And this gets into another aspect of everything I've learned. The reality is our food production system is not tenable for the population growth that we're having, and it's also inherently dangerous in that we've optimized these systems to the point that yes, you're getting everything you could want from around the world delivered to you in what's called the just-in-time food delivery system. Everything has been calculated exactly to what the people in any individual market want. So every 3 days, in every market, in every first world part of the world, those goods are coming in. Now, what happens when there's a disruption?
Yeah.
You see the shelves. You go to the store, it's empty, it's wiped out, and those trucks, until they're coming in again, you're on your own. So the reality is, it's a very, very dangerous situation we've created. Now, it's a wonderful economy of scale, and it's wonderful for profitability, and when it works, we live better than the Roman emperors. We have more access to, you know, food and goods than anyone ever in the history of the world. I mean, we are living at the 1% of goods delivery ever imagined, and it's only increasing. I mean, soon Amazon will have blimps in the sky with drones flying out of them, flying right to your home, right on time. But again, when that breaks down, people are in a very dangerous situation. So, you know, it's food security on one hand, and then it's also resource management on the other hand, and that our management of resources to accomplish all of this isn't tenable. We are draining the world's aquifers. We are, we are running out of arable land. You know, for us to continue the farming practices that we've used for thousands of years, to meet the amount of population that's projected to grow in the next 20 years, we would need another 1 billion hectares of land come available. That's a landmass the size of Canada. It simply doesn't exist. So we have to find other ways that are more energy efficient, resource efficient in managing those kind of problems. And where does the answer come from? The answer comes from creating local growing systems that are plugged directly into the communities that are more efficiently using all of those resources, and that also solves the danger of the just-in-time food delivery system, to where now when you have a disaster or something happens, you have this net. Okay, so let's say Houston gets hit with a hurricane. If these systems are in Houston, okay, some of those systems go offline, they get damaged. Okay?
Right.
But the ones that are still operating, they're still operating. And then also all of the cities around, now instead of having to pull resources from thousands of miles away, we're able to pull resources in a much closer proximity to where the problems are happening. So that's the future that I'm preaching. I'm preaching a future, and that's why I say every home in America.
What do you think? What do you think is the timeline on? Like I said, so if it because this is really, this is amazing shit, right? I mean, so that you've been working on it for a while. So let's say in the next 5 years, who's going to have these units, and is it going to be? Will Whole Foods put a couple acres somewhere? Is it going to be the restaurants, or do you have a business plan?
We have a couple of different profiles that we've analyzed. So when it comes to the individual units, it's obvious. I think it's going to be, people that in the beginning, for individual families, it's going to be people who have money. You're going to need to have either the credit or the cash, to spend the $100,000 to have one on your home.
And if they have one on their home, that's one unit. That's one pod.
Well, it's two pods is one unit.
2 pods is 1 unit.
Yeah.
Okay, and that takes up about how much space?
Each one is about 600 square feet. So think about a large 2-story garage.
Okay, all right. So that's a good amount of space.
Well, I'm sorry, not 2-story. I should have said 2-car garage.
2-car garage.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a good amount of space. So they're going to have to be they're going to have a little bit of money, and they're going to have a little bit of space on their property.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Probably in the country.
So for individuals, that's what those people that have the means and the space. When it comes to more of the commercial type situations, what we see is and we are in conversations with 2 different grocery store chains, one on the East Coast and one on the West Coast, where you go and you put it into you have some land right to one of their distribution centers. You do an analysis of what they're spending the most money on pulling in from out of market. Then the system starts growing that, and now they're their own producer. And they're not, again, the labor costs are low, energy, water, non-existent. So now they're able to produce whatever they're paying a premium for to bring in from out of market. They can supply it in market at the highest level. Our systems don't use any pesticides, herbicides, or fertilizer. So it's 100% organic. So you can supply inside your market whatever you're spending the most on at the highest grade, organic, fresh, all year long, not determined on weather, climate, anything else.
So you can put this in the middle of the desert or in the middle of Vermont in the winter season.
It operates the best in the desert.
Yeah.
So desert areas would be the absolute best that we could go into.
So even the military should be looking at this.
I totally believe it. I think you could have them on ships. One of my dreams is, and this is a long-term project, is to take a super tanker, have it filled with our systems, and then calculate a path around the Earth to where it's basically going into different markets at different times and delivering. And then you could also have it for hunger relief or disaster relief as well.
Well, a buddy of mine that we did Operation Hot honoring our troops. We went to Afghanistan. We also went into Kandahar on 2 different. I went to Afghanistan 3 different times to do these shows, and he was in charge of all the food for all the military all over the world. And we did 7 shows for the military. We fed them and gave them gifts and stuff. But anyway, he was in charge of all the food and the logistics of it. And at any one time, right now, there are 4 ships out at sea going around in a circle, and they're ready for wartime. So within 24 hours, we can be set up anywhere in the world and have 20,000 soldiers ready to go and be able to feed them, and they'll have everything they need to be successful.
That's amazing.
Right?
That's amazing.
So these 4 ships are out there now, and then once they time out, then they'll bring that back in the market in one of the bases, and they'll use that out, and they'll put a fresh one out. So that's what's happening. I think you're probably spot on with that. With that idea.
Yeah, we actually had a proposal out to SoftWorks, which is a division of the Defense Department, and we'll be going back to them. They invited us back in September, where we had proposed designing one that could literally be airdropped. So you could have our, you could have the planes flying over, and it just drops out of the plane and it lands, and then it starts producing food for everybody.
So once someone gets one of these, it gets airdropped. How long does it take to get set up and produce and to eat?
It's operational when it lands, so it's about 4 weeks.
4 weeks.
4 weeks, it's producing food, but within 3 days of it landing, it's producing all of its own electricity and water.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Well, geez, man, I don't know. It's really intriguing, and it's pretty amazing. What got you started in this? What?
So honestly, I was doing trends research for a family office, and I just kept coming across
What kind of research?
Trends research.
Trends.
So seeing, future trends,
Gotcha.
technology trends, things. And so I was just reading a lot of government reports on technology and where civilization and society was going, and you cannot ignore the data that it is just, without being too fatalistic, the reality is this system that we're using, it is so brilliant and it has worked so well, but it's not going to continue to work. And the problem is human nature is until we hit that wall, it's gonna operate the same. Now, people are starting to see it, and also with the effects of climate change on farming, and the resource question. The lack of land, the lack of available water. There is an awakening that's going on, and so you do see farm tech becoming a big deal, and there's a lot of really smart people in a lot of different industries and finance that have seen where we're going. So I won't say completely that humanity's totally blind, but the way it seems to be working is we're building up these systems, and yes, right when we hit the cliff, we'll be able to deploy them. So instead of the bus going off the cliff, I guess the bus will just float on. But
So starting in November, the first unit is going to be done. So listeners out there, at what point can people purchase the unit?
In November.
Starting in November.
Yeah, I mean, and we will be giving price breaks to the first people that come in and buy the systems.
What about the manufacturing? And my man, that's a lot of questions there.
Sure,
what about the manufacturing? Have you streamlined?
That's exactly what this is. So this is a production candidate. What production candidate means is that all of the sources of every part have been completely cataloged. We have all of the relationships set up, and Jeff is the genius behind this. With his work from Boeing, he was an engineer, but he was in charge not just of design, but in the production scale. So this was everything that he did, which I've gotten all my education on this from him, is having all those relationships, having all the parts cataloged, having everything set up so that you could go to mass production right away. And that is the difference between what we were doing in the early stages, which is I had a great team together, but it was a team of workers and engineers and specialists that we were just buying what we needed, ordering it, putting it all together, and that was when we were just testing everything. But no, this is 100%. When this is built in November, we will be ready to mass produce on a mass scale.
And what will it take when somebody puts that first order in December? How long will it take before they get that unit?
I think safely, the first ones, our projections are 4 to 5 months. When we really get up into the high rate of production, it'll be down to about 60 days.
Wow. Well, where can people go to learn more about you and everything that you got going on?
Keep an eye out on EdenGrowSystems.com. We are updating the website. We're going to have our new product catalog out that will reflect the new system. Anyone can always email me as well if they want to get a jump on everything. Bart at Eden Grow Systems. I know that Jeff's channel, the Real Martian, will be announcing the build when he's breaking ground in the next couple of weeks, and people will actually be able to follow as it's constructed every step of the way. And then once it's operational, they'll be able to watch all the plants growing as well. So we're going to have plenty of media and plenty of stuff for people to digest over the next couple of months awesome. As we complete this.
That's awesome. Well, Bart, listen, I appreciate you coming in, and make sure you go to Eden.
EdenGrowSystems.com.
Yeah,
and they can do a search online for that, and there'll also be some great YouTube videos that'll pop up. I will be speaking at the New Worlds Conference in November. And so we should have plenty of media to be feeding everybody and showing everybody. So just keep an eye out for those taglines, and they'll be able to find us.
Awesome. Hey, man, I sure do appreciate you coming in and sharing some really state-of-the-art wild
Brother,
stuff.
I can't thank you enough for having me on. Man.
Yeah,
This
man.
has been awesome.
Yeah, really cool. Super cool. So thank you for coming in. And also, I wanted to thank the team for all. I know that Venus had to skip out, but Bob and Jay and Monica, thanks for coming in and making things happen. And also a quick shout out to our sponsors once again: Dunkin' Coffee, Aceway Incorporated, Texas Beef Council, Coffee School, Culinary Arts, and the American Culinary Federation. Thank you guys for trusting us and helping us get the word out. And the fans, again, go to this is our Gourmet Club Live, so that's a recipe celebrity secrets, but also go to the Recipe Unplugged. Go search that show for us, okay? Recipe Unplugged, and subscribe, and because it's a totally different show with our comedian Eric Knowles. So I appreciate y'all listening, and again, remember, you're especially great. Get off your ass and do something. See you next time.